Welcome back to episode 2 of the Vital MX 2023 Monster Energy Supercross preview shows. We've done the clear contenders for the 450 title, and now in episode 2, presented by our friends at Yoshimura, we're going to talk about the guys who have won main events in the past. They know what it takes and whether they could potentially repeat that feat in the upcoming season, and whether they could even break into that group of contenders, which is unlikely, but you never know. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, again, and I'm joined by Michael Lindsay, again. And first off, we've got to talk about the guy who has dominated headlines all off-season. He just hasn't gone away, and that is, of course, Ken Roczen, who has been on a magical mystery tour of teams and bikes for months before eventually deciding on the progressive X-Star Suzuki team, or whatever the official title is. I feel like it's changed a few times. Obviously, it's a very surprising move. I'd love to go in a time machine back to Anaheim 1 2022 and tell Roczen that he would be riding for HEP in a year's time and see the reaction from all involved. I feel like that would be quite entertaining. But that is the situation that we have found ourselves in. And will it work? But before we get to will it work, I think the biggest question is what qualifies it as working? Because at Honda, he had to win a lot of races. He had to be a contender for the championship. I feel like now the bar is lower, but I don't know where that sits exactly.
I think it works if there's a race win. I think if there's a race win, top fives, we're in some battles. I think that's it. Suzuki hasn't been there in years. Since this platform's came around, they've never really been there. The HEP team's never been there. Yes, for Kenny, that sounds like a low goal, but even in some interviews, like some comments I've heard from him, the little bit he's done, he kind of talks about wins more, it seems like, than championships, just like getting some wins. So would you...
Let's do this then. Last year, or this year, 2022, he won Anaheim 1. He then kind of disappeared a little bit, but he led some laps. He ran up front. He was still in the picture until he disappeared completely after Daytona. Say that exact thing happens again. He wins one race. He's there or thereabouts for the next 9 rounds, and then he just misses the second half of the season. Is that good enough?
I don't think so. I think he has to finish the season because, again, we could point at health. It could be, health this, or I'm sick this, or just no matter what, though, then with the team situation he's on now, there would be a lot more question marks of like, well, is the bike not good enough? Why is he bailing out partway through the season, where you don't have those thoughts with Honda? So I think he has to get through the season for it to be considered a success.
I think it's very, 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 very clear in my mind what Roczen will do. I think he comes out at Anaheim 1. He either wins, which may be a bit of a high expectation, or gets on the podium. He does an interview after the race. He says, "It's great to have a team of people around me who support me, listen to me. I'm having so much fun. This is amazing. I love it. This is the best thing that's ever happened in my life." He'll then go to round 2, be in the picture still, but maybe finish 5th or 6th. And then suddenly the narrative will be, well, we got a late start. We're working through some things. We'll get there. We're just ironing a few things out, and we'll get there. It's all good. It's good. It's fun. It's amazing. Fast forward to round 6. Maybe it will have continued to dip a little bit more. And then it will be, yeah, we've really got a late start and we've really got some things to work. And I feel like I'm certain that will happen, which is the opposite way that it would go for most other riders. Because again, he did get a late start. That's true. So in most instances, you would start slow and then build up and be your strongest at the end. But I think Roczen will enter A1 with such a clear-cut mindset of, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. Everyone who doubted me, watch this. He could be riding a bicycle and it wouldn't matter because his mind would carry him to the podium at Anaheim 1. Does that sound realistic at least?
Yeah, I said for the contenders, I talked about Webb being one of the 2 people that is mentally strong enough to will themselves to do something. This is the other one I was referring to. I agree with that. Whether Roczen could be racing a Beta, he could be racing a Triumph we've never seen. He could be racing a Sherco. I don't care. Or a
bicycle.
A bicycle. I don't care. He can win A1. And also going back to stats on him, 2014, first year racing the KTM 415 Supercross, wins A1. 2015, first year racing the RCH Suzuki, wins A1. 2017, Honda HRC, first year racing that bike at A1, he wins. He is one of those guys. The bike could be at 80%. He will figure it out. He will prove a point. You could label it like heavy chip on the shoulder. You could label it ego. You could label it self-belief. Whatever it is, he will find a way, I feel like, to make it happen. So for me, yeah, it seems like a bit of a stretch to fully stamp this, but I'm 100% on board with him winning A1. He is my favorite to win the opening round just because I feel like everything points to what we talk about. The contenders don't need to win A1, but I feel like he will put himself in the position where he feels like he needs to win A1, and he will want to more than anybody on that gate.
And 1 year ago, he won A1. He was sick coming in. He had little preparation. No one thought he was going to win A1. He didn't think it, but for some reason, it just worked out. And again, carbon copy, I think, is what we're going to get when 2023 Monster Energy Supercross fires into life. You compared him to Webb there, very similar mindsets. I think there's one key difference. I think once Roczen ticks that box at an individual race, that chip will then lessen significantly. Whereas Webb carries that through 17 rounds, I think once Roczen ticks that box, suddenly he becomes a bit lighter, the chip disappears, and then we don't get that again.
I think his past track records, bro. What makes anyone think, and I don't mean this so aggressively, but he goes to a team that has never competed at this level, has never competed with the guy at this level. What is also going to make that combination go with Kenny, who hasn't been able to put together seasons for years due to multiple reasons? How is that all magically also going to change in 1 year?
Truthfully, let's call a spade a spade. This is a team that hasn't really even battled for top 10s. They got there in 2022, but they haven't really gone through 17 rounds every week going, we're in the top 10, we're in the top 10, we're in the top 10. It's always been, it would be great if we could get in the top 10. This is worlds apart. But I do think there will be success. I don't think there'll be a lot of it, but I think there will be some success to speak of. I think Roczen will be happy. I think he'll finish 5th, 6th in points, and I think it'll be good, and he'll then go into the outdoors or World Supercross or whatever, and it'll all work itself out, and 2023 will go down as a perfectly fine season.
So the other thing we talk about is the expectation. So again, we've seen Kenny when, whether it's health, whether it's mental, whether it's bike, when he has stepped away mid-season when it's not going good, I think it's because the expectation is when he's riding around in 7th, you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? What is going on? Versus this year, again, we're talking about, let's say he wins a race, has another podium or two. If there's races he's riding around in 5th, 6th, 7th on that bike, I don't feel like it's as big of an issue. So does it also allow him to finish the season? If it is, maybe you say a little more mental, is this the perfect situation where he can get through a year without as much people wondering, like, what's going on with you?
Yeah, I think he's got that card in his back pocket where we go and interview him after he finishes 9th at Oakland, and he knows that, we got a late start, and he knows that's a perfectly acceptable reason that we'll go, yeah, you did. And then it will go away. Whereas if that had happened with HRC, we would go away and debate like hell. What's wrong with him? How disastrous is this? What happens next? But like, it would be the biggest news story ever. And I think that'll make him lighter, which actually is going to maybe help significantly.
So moving on to our next two people. Tough part is, statistically, typically only 5 people win during a Monster Energy Supercross season. We had our 4 title contenders we spoke of, so naturally we're saying those 4 guys will all win a race. We're talking about 3 guys here that have won races. I'm saying Kenny wins, so at that point, we're getting on to the next 2, and I don't know if I can say either of them win or we're getting past something that doesn't historically happen.
No, and I think I would put Barcia as the next guy to talk about. Obviously, he has won a lot through his career, sporadically, but he's won a fair amount of races. Weird 2022 for him because he was quieter than ever, but it was effective because he was in the fight for 3rd in the points. So you can't argue that it wasn't effective, but also, apart from when he got involved in controversy...
I would say quieter except for the moments with Bogle and Malcolm.
Yes, but aside from the controversy, I feel like no one really spoke about his results at all through 17 rounds. But once you added it up, he was in the mix for, truthfully, a result that is as good as it's going to get with him.
So I know somebody that was working around that operation mentioned to me in Outdoors when he had changed up some of his program stuff, there was kind of a comment like, yeah, a lot of people are looking at his Outdoors going, man, his season is just not going great. Well, he had like the most consistent Supercross season he's ever had. Again, not a lot of noise outside of controversy, but very solid points haul for the year. Just insanely consistent round to round. Just not a lot of big flashes and moments.
Does he need flashes? What would you think would make the season better for Barcia if he has the flashes but the lows are low and he finishes 7th in the points, or we don't notice him for 17 rounds and he ends up 4th in the points?
I think flashes because, again, the cast of characters we're talking about he's racing against, I don't know, me personally, again, we're not labeling him a championship contender. You're going up against guys, I don't know, do you want to run around quietly and just get a decent points haul and be like, cool, I was consistent, or do you want to be on the box? Do you want to have moments where you're on in front of the fans, getting cheered for, battling for a potential win? He's late in his career. Again, he won 250 titles. We can pretty much say at this point there's probably not a chance he'll win a 450 title. So why not have some moments, some memories?
And contract year and flashes do result in contracts.
Yeah. Because again, if you're Mr. Consistent, that's cool. But everybody right now is looking for somebody that can put it. If you're not a title contender, can you put it on the box? Can you give us some notoriety? I think in a championship year, yeah, you send it a little bit more. Or a contract year, you send it a little bit more.
Yeah, and compare him to Roczen in 2022. Like I say, Roczen won one race. Then from there on out, it was pretty disastrous. But I feel like because he won that race, his 2022 sticks in your mind much more than Barcia's, who, truthfully, Barcia had a much more successful season. But take a poll of any fan out there and they will immediately remember that Roczen won a race. That lives in memories. Another guy who won a race in 2022 even, Marvin Musquin. Similar to Barcia, contract year, nearing the end of his career. Well, similar to Roczen as well, actually. I don't know what we get from him because I probably put Barcia and Roczen above him in my power rankings. But equally, I think he is criminally underrated. He was the top KTM rider last year.
The only one to win on that platform in Supercross.
And would I be surprised if that happens again? No. But would I bet on it? No.
Again, we had Webb in the championship group, so we're saying he has to win a race, which he didn't last year. What are the chances that Marvin ends up being the only KTM Husqvarna Gas guy to win a race again this year? Could that stat be repeated? How insane would that be, or how unlikely?
I think that if you'd said that any other season, you'd be laughed out of the room, but I think it's definitely something to seriously consider this time around. Obviously, his win last year did come at a Triple Crown, so I think that has its own little thing next to it. I think he has a solid season. I think he runs around from 3rd to 6th most weeks. I think that adds up to a decent result in a championship. And actually, I think he'll have a very similar season to what Barcia had in 2022. No wins, but you won't really notice him much. But come round 15, 16, 17, you'll look at the points and go, would you look at that? He's actually had a really good season and we've just been shit-talking him for the last 5 months.
So the last thing with Marv is I feel like part of the reason we see him back this season is because he got a race win last year. I mean, part of the reason he's in different gear this year from Thor was because he told those guys he was done. Like, everybody thought he was done, and then midway through summer, it's like, hey, he has an opportunity to do one more year. He's having a kid now. I just feel like if he doesn't get a win this year and just has an okay season, is that it? Does the motivation dry up when you're not winning for a Marv as long as he's been around? Is that when he exits? And if he wins again this year, does that keep him around another year? Does that give KTM go, man, he won on the bike. Again, we give him another year.
I think he exits no matter what because I think KTM are ready to move on. We all know that it wasn't a clear-cut thing, him getting a contract with Orange for 2023. So I think this is the end of Marvin's career this year. And maybe that gives him an extra little something. Maybe he's willing to leave it all on the track and actually he has his best season in quite some time. I wouldn't rule that out either. Like, he's such a wild card to me that I almost wouldn't rule out anything. And I could see anything happening bar a championship.
Because the thing is, when we say his best year ever, it's not him winning title, but him battling up front in multiple races with a Tomac or an Anderson would be a hell of a way to end your career.
To summarize, I think I would put Roczen down as it's going to be a roller coaster. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. Marvin is going to be quiet but effective, and Barcia maybe somewhere between those two.
So my last one for you is back to the statistic thing of 5 guys winning a season. So we have 3 here. Do you think one of them wins a race, 2 of them win a race, or do you think all 3 of them somehow manage to win a race?
I think Roczen's the only one who wins a race, and I am iffy on that. I do not think the Barcia will win a race. A lot of podiums, sure. I don't think Marvin will win a race. A lot of podiums, sure. I'm 50% certain that Roczen wins a race. I think the other winners are going to come from the next group, the guys who haven't won a 450 main event yet, but are right there and it's due. I think those are going to be the guys who kind of swap places with the Roczens, the Barcias, the Musquins, and establish themselves as true threats to the championship contenders of taking points from those riders. I think this is the year of the Ferrandises, the ACs, the Plessingers, those riders. But we'll get into that on episode 3 tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific time. We'll be back then to break down those riders and more in the 3rd episode of Vital MX's 2023 Monster Energy Supercross preview shows. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching.